DeShaun Foster continues to add and address his team's needs in the transfer portal. What next? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free where we get your podcast and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support, your team every day. And where we get started today, DeShaun Foster continues to add in the transfer portal. The window is closed to enter, barring some extenuating circumstances, so nobody else can leave. Only UCLA at this moment can add at this moment. Of course, all the other teams still looking who are the best players out there. The Bruins and DeShaun Foster started the week off talking about how they had more NFL draftees than USC, had a good local base of, hey, let's go get some local talent, and now continue to add in the transfer portal. DeShaun Foster had hinted he was going after guys in the D-line. And here we go. We're starting with Kechaun Bennett, one of two Big Ten rival players now coming to UCLA. Bennett from Michigan only has 1 year of eligibility, was part of that 2021 class for Michigan, so saw the highs and the lows of a Michigan Wolverine could possibly be, right? You see the spy gate cancel, right? Whatever it was, the sign stealing. You see winning the national championship, Jim Harbaugh, everything. He's been around it all in college football. But the most important thing, even though he's seen limited time, he's played mostly on special teams, didn't see a lot of time getting full defensive reps. This is a guy that you want coming to UCLA to develop in his final year. Michigan's got one of the deepest D-lines, one of the best defenses in the country. Heck, they held Ohio State in their home football stadium in a huge upset. Michigan, we clearly saw last year, couldn't score points, and that defense was dominant. Not saying that necessarily Kechaun Bennett was a big part of that, but if you're wondering, well, he hasn't seen a lot of time on the field. Well, Michigan's been pretty darn good these last few years, certainly on the defensive side of the football. And if Bennett's coming over, Michigan's depth was a key thing and a key reason why, let's head on out to UCLA. Maybe this was the year Bennett was going to crack the rotation on the D-line for Michigan, or you find a school like UCLA after a pretty good spring game. You're like, wait a minute. UCLA has an opportunity here, and that's what DeShaun Foster can offer. You saw Jacob Busick hit to the portal for UCLA, the one-time transfer into UCLA, transferring out from the D-line. We've seen a couple of players slowly trickle out after the window closed, the announcements of those players, Busick one of them. So the Bruins, with Bennett coming to UCLA, add and get some much-needed depth on the D-line, and maybe he can be one of those one-hit wonders, dominates his senior season, and maybe that turns into an NFL career or at least a fun senior season for Bennett. That's not where UCLA stopped there. They also went to Michigan State, an edge transfer in Anthony Jones. This is a guy who has a couple of years of eligibility left, 6'4", 260, 38 tackles, 2 sacks in his college career so far, reported from On3, I believe, just the other evening on the 1st of May. High school ball in Las Vegas, a 3-star product. You had Kechaun Bennett, who was a 4-star product, but Jones, who's done a little bit more in his shorter career at East Lansing, has found his way, all right, coming to UCLA, coming back closer to the West Coast after high school ball in Vegas. This is a guy, though, who has been around the block from Oregon out of high school, Indiana, then Michigan State, and finally UCLA. 3 transfer portal entries, 4 schools, and now we're wondering, how is this going to work out for UCLA? Still a couple years of eligibility left, and hopefully UCLA can keep this kid for more than a year and not have to go re-recruit the kid in the next spring. Either way, Jones comes with a little more experience on the field with more schools in his history than Kechaun Bennett, but those are 2 guys looking for opportunities, and UCLA presents that with somewhat of a wide open defensive line. There's no clear-cut starters until Keanu Williams gets healthy. There's been guys like Collins Achampong, who's already hit the portal after not really finding any traction at UCLA, fighting through his injury history, transferring over to the Bruins from Miami. UCLA can offer, especially to these D-line guys, the best opportunities. Hey, come battle. We need you. We need the depth And after Femi Oladejo just got drafted as an edge, what can Kechaun Malloy tell a guy like Anthony Jones? Hey, look at this kid who just transferred in, and in a little less than a year is already in the second round, turning more into an edge. After the beginning of his career, he was more of a middle linebacker. That's a good proposition to have if you're a defensive coordinator. Look at this, what we've done the last couple of years. And then, okay, Bennett, big prospect. Maybe this was the year he cracked the lineup at Michigan. I don't know. But at UCLA, a much greater chance, much greater percentage, you're going to get used and probably start. And Kechaun Malloy is creative. He will find ways to utilize these players, I think, for the better. And that's why DeShaun Foster's like, we're going to go get guys. And he's been trying to find the guys, maybe in the greater reach, right? Vegas is certainly well within reach for UCLA's recruiting hub. Obviously, you can go in the backyard and find some talented players, defense, offense, anything in the local SoCal area down to San Diego. Maybe you stretch a little further north into Ventura, go even to NorCal. There's talent everywhere. And DeShaun Foster is making sure to go after that talent from the beginning of his tenure at UCLA to as long as he's head coach of the Bruin football program. And now still saying, hey, we got the big splash. If we can develop, get just a couple more pieces, develop defensively, the Bruins can surprise. Their win total on FanDuel has already grown to like 5.5. Can UCLA continue to climb up these rankings, not just in the transfers, but slowly in the high school ranks, keep these guys there, and turn this into not just a bowl club, a bowl-eligible club, but a winning club year in and year out? DeShaun Foster's on a mission to bring the buzz and the energy back to UCLA. And quite frankly, all right, maybe these guys aren't the loudest big-name products like the Nico Iamaleavas or Madden even coming back after his initial commitment to UCLA. They might fly under the radar, but they might be big players that can turn up. Maybe they don't. Not everything works out for UCLA or any college football program, but getting guys, adding depth, maybe this defense can surprise in 2025 for Kechaun Malloy, who, with less defensive line talent than in 2023, did a serviceable job with his unit in 2024 and looks to do something similar in 2025 with even less NFL talent, at least at the beginning of the year in 2025, to turn his team into a capable defensive unit. And I believe we'll find out how it all works out. Next, we're talking UCLA men's basketball. What does this mean? They backed out of the CBS Sports Classic. Was this Mick Cronin's doing? Was this the AD's doing? Let's talk all about this next on Locked On UCLA. Let's go. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, a Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. They're easy-to-use website with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. A complete inventory, over 200,000 parts from over 400-plus top brands. You'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Oh, if you need help with an order, Supply House has the expert support, industry-leading service, so you'll always be talking to a real person. The trade pros looking for an extra edge, free Trade Master program with exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals already take advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Going back onto the basketball front for UCLA, the Bruins, after I talked earlier in the week, what is this marquee non-conference that UCLA has or doesn't? They don't have a lot of travel baked into this schedule, built in, whatever you might call it. The Bruins don't look to be in any sort of Thanksgiving, Christmas week tournaments. I've been looking at John Rothstein, who's got his own little hub of, hey, these are all the teams in tournaments, whether they're local in Palm Springs, Southern California, out to Hawaii, all the way on the East Coast. UCLA's not in any of those. And then I saw Matt Norlander, who I believe from CBS Sports, broke the story that UCLA is not in the CBS Sports Classic. Okay, what does that mean? Well, everybody's going to get hyped up that St. John's is joining this agreement. It's the four teams of Ohio State, North Carolina, Kentucky, UCLA, where I think that goes on for another year maybe in the deal. Either way, UCLA will not be in it in 2025. And most of the time, UCLA was traveling pretty far east. Normally not a big issue for Mick Cronin and UCLA. But since they're no longer in the Pac-12 conference, they're in the Big Ten conference, they make trips east all the time, whether they play in Chicago, whether they're playing in New York. I'm not sure. The Bruins are like, you know what? This ain't it. Just not it. Although they could have played Kentucky, and that would have been fun. They're no longer going to play UCLA, Ohio State. That can't happen because they're Big Ten opponents. That helps with the scheduling flexibility, of course. And from what I'm reading, it looks like, okay, maybe UCLA was not fully on board trying to go east. Mick Cronin talked about the travel. This is what it says in the CBS Sports article about this. Mick Cronin, we've seen the Statue of Liberty twice in the last 3 weeks, talking about the last part of his non-conference and beginning of Big Ten travel, right? The Bruins went from New York, came back, went to Nebraska, came back, went to the East Coast to play Rutgers in Maryland, traveled all the way around, came back, right? They went back and forth so many times. This year's Big Ten schedule, I'm not sure if it's as brutal as last year's was. You mix in a non-conference trip to New York. Mick Cronin wants to limit the travel, and I wonder if he's already figured out how much the travel hurt his guys during the conference season. You saw the Bruins, they started horribly during the January portion of Big Ten play. Now, when they went to Eugene, when they hosted Washington, they started 2-0. But in the more of the traditional conference season in college basketball, the Bruins did not start that well. Winless, it seemed like, till the middle part of January when they hosted Iowa. Partially because the Big Ten schedule is pretty stupid. If you think about it, they had a one-off to Nebraska, come back, play a one-off against Michigan, go all the way to the East Coast, play two. The Bruins were beat up. They were hurt, sick, everything, came back, went to the West Coast, and they figured it out. And that's when the Bruins started continuing a long winning streak against some of the best teams in the country, some of the best teams in the Big Ten Conference. Now, Martin Jarmond, the UCLA AD, had some comments about, hey, we'd love to now make this a big game at UCLA. This is what the UCLA AD had to say, quote, "We're always assessing how we can improve the men's basketball program. And a big part of that is evaluating our team's schedule. We value our long-standing partnership with CBS and look forward to working with them in the future. But as we explore future schedule options, it's important that we are strategic and have some flexibility." Continuing the quote from Martin Jarmond, "We want to bolster our home schedule, and I know that our fans are excited for the opportunity to add a game in Pauley Pavilion." That was the statement from the UCLA Athletic Director as posted by Matt Norlander. What's funny, though, is if you look at this schedule, I've talked about it. They haven't released this schedule. The last couple of years, the home schedule has been pretty garbage. Where are they going to add another, local school? They're going to go bring in some East Coast school, pay them to fly west to get 4,000 fans? The Bruins better bring somebody in. They better have something in the works, and maybe they're on the verge of announcing something. They have UCLA playing Cal in a neutral site, playing Arizona in a neutral site. They're supposed to go to Seattle to play Gonzaga in a neutral site. No Thanksgiving tournaments. Yes, they're limiting the travel, so not playing in this CBS Sports Classic will limit the travel, although I did like the primetime exposure. UCLA Kentucky is a game I think that should be played, although if you go to Rupp, you come back and have that game at Pauley. That was a lot of fun. I guess closer to a decade ago when those games were played consistently, when those two teams were jostling for position in the top five, battling in the NCAA tournament, De'Aaron Fox, Lonzo Ball, right? Twice in a year. Brought a lot of hype in the earlier rounds of the NCAA tournament, in the earlier portions of the NCAA schedule. Just those games being played generally with the two top blue bloods, if you go by national championships, all time in men's college basketball. Now, without that game, UCLA will have less travel. Huge. And if it's not going to be a marquee home game, it's good for the Bruins because they'll have another win on their record, most likely, right? Barring a huge upset or some sort of choke at home at Pauley Pavilion. The Bruins, most importantly, are avoiding travel. Get another home game, or maybe they have something in the works that we just don't know about, and then they get this home game back while they slowly mix in these more locally based neutral site games against Cal, as reported by John Rothstein. The Arizona agreement, which I guess is supposed to be earlier in the year at the Intuit Dome. You then add in the Gonzaga game that's supposed to be played in Climate Pledge Arena. So those are some of the games. Last year, UCLA didn't have any marquee home games, zero. And they still went to Henderson to go play New Mexico? A big game, huge game early part of the slate for a team that made it to the NCAA tournament, won their Mountain West Conference. It wasn't at home. It wasn't in New Mexico. It wasn't at the home of the Lobos. So let's get something and add to the schedule. The big thing, though, the Bruins do not have to travel. That is huge. They're not going to have to travel. They're limiting it. So instead of building it in early, they are reducing that and going into more of a travel-heavy mode in January to March. We saw the women take an opposite approach, though. They went to Paris. They went to Hawaii. They're like, let's add a game on a midday and a Monday and add to our East Coast trip and play 3 games and then go back and play some more games. Let's go play in New Jersey twice and then go to Maryland. Now, I think the schedule on the women's side was a little bit better in terms of how they built the Big Ten schedule. Yet UCLA, the majority of the season, was the number 1 team in the country and still got the job done with all the travel to France, Hawaii, to the East Coast, going to the Midwest once, twice, 3 times. They only play 18 conference games, but when they added those 2 for UCLA, those are still only a couple of West Coast games, Oregon and Washington. That doesn't really change anything for their travel to the East Coast. The UCLA women, though, they still were successful. So does that mean Mick Cronin and the UCLA men's basketball team, they have to keep getting rid of all these games that travel in December when you have plenty of time to recover prior to finals, after finals? I'm not sure. There's still a better way to hopefully make this schedule, and they need some marquee home games or nobody's going to show up until January. I hope that changes, though. We'll talk more about it as it slowly releases throughout the rest of the offseason. Next, let's talk UCLA football in the spring game. Is it going to be entertaining? I believe so. Will it show us anything? Well, until all the transfers get in, I'm not entirely sure. Let's talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. Okay, so we're going to wrap things up here on Locked On UCLA. The Bruins, we're on the eve of the spring game. Some schools have already had spring games. UCLA, because of how their schedule works, they work in the quarter system. They get their spring break of sorts. They're in between quarter break, and a unique spot allows UCLA to bring in players, which they've done. Nico, they brought in Madden. They brought in a lot of players, close to 24 to 26 players, as I touched on in the beginning of the pod. The spring showcase, though, at the Rose Bowl, as it should be, free parking, 10 a.m. start, 11 a.m. where the gates open, where the parking opens at 10, gates open at 11. They've got the alumni autograph session right around 12:30. Players like Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, some recent legendary Bruins on that list. A couple of more as well with the autograph session. Say, okay, let's go. Let's bring out some of the younger UCLA fans, some, fans my age, and then you bring in fans of all ages. And the spring showcase is supposed to start around 2. Now, last year, of course, they build up, they warm up, they go through warm-ups, they stretch, and then they slowly get into their spring showcase, right? The Bruins don't play a general spring game. They don't draft 2 teams and have a score and have it televised. They have offense versus defense and see who wins. That's usually how it's been, and that's how it was in 2024. Now, I remember when I was going as a kid getting the signatures from Anthony Barr when the Rose Bowl was half closed because of super duper construction way back when, but you had your little construction hats, you walk out there, get it signed, and the next thing you know, this kid blossoms and has one of the biggest sacks in, recent UCLA modern history that they'll play over and over anytime there's a UCLA USC highlight. But there's plenty of spring game moments, and I hope UCLA keeps this for days to come. I wonder, I'm not sure if I've heard anything about DeShaun Foster mentioning a number of recruits that are expected to come to the spring showcase. He might have said it before. Huge recruiting event. They're like, hey, look, this is where we play our home games. We have our spring game here. The weather's expected to be pretty nice, not way too hot. Still plenty of shade on the home side of the Rose Bowl. It's time to roll. Now, are we going to see Nico? Are we going to see all these guys? No. We can't see too much of the offense. And there's been a lot of the youngsters at the quarterback position who've already stepped out and gone somewhere else or are looking for a new home. Defensively, you might see some development, might be able to see some of the other players in depth spots at the skill position, some guys you haven't heard of. Maybe they'll make plays on some of the DBs in the secondary with the quarterback that's not going to be the quarterback of the future, right? Nico still has to finish up at Tennessee to get to UCLA. Madden working his way over as well. We won't see anything. Sometimes people are like, oh, look, they're going to take this kid. The other benefit, though, of having the game when it is, all these schools were worried about spring games and losing their players. And then we went through this transition of Deion saying, hey, let's bring in Syracuse and have this spring game exhibition where we can sell it out and do the complete opposite of what these schools are doing, canceling their spring game, worried that the portal is going to do it. Well, obviously, the portal closed a week prior, so the Bruins having it at this portion of the schedule in early May rather than mid to late April means you're going to have to choose to leave before the spring game, which we've seen a lot of guys already do. Now, they can't ball out and be like, oh, I want to go somewhere else. No. Unless something crazy happens, you can't go into the transfer portal. That is closed. The Bruins have lost as many players as they can get, and they can only add, hopefully, more talented prospects after that. So the beauty of it, you're not going to lose anybody, at least prior to this season, unless they do some, hey, we're going to sue the NCAA nonsense and just do it anyways, which, could happen. You never know. Bruins aren't going to lose anybody from standing out in the spring showcase. It's just not going to happen. The joy, beautiful Saturday afternoon at the Rose Bowl. It's not 80, 90 degrees like it will be at the end of August when the Bruins will play Utah in some nationally televised game because everybody wants to see Nico. The downside, we're not going to see the full complement of everything, right? We're not going to see, okay, is the defense there? What is Ethan Garber's looking like? Or the quarterbacks develop? No, we just don't get that information in May. We're going to have to wait and see how the team develops in the offseason, the true offseason, from post-spring ball, pre-fall camp. How can they get these guys caught up to full speed with the knowledge of the playbook from Tino Sunseri, get those guys coming into the UCLA weight program, strength and conditioning program, and turn themselves into competitive football club this fall, which they should be. At what level, though? Bowl eligibility, 7-8 win team, or they fall short of expectations. That's what the entertainment's there, and we'll talk about it all off season. Until next time, UCLA fans, get your hands up. Bruins fans, 8-clap time. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.